Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and checking out our water management tour in Marlin No-Till. My name is Avat Shekoofa. I'm a crop physiologist with the UT Plant Sciences Department. So I'm going to share my results of recent irrigation trials today with you. But before sharing this and starting talking and discussing this topic, I thought it may be very helpful to share this slide with you to give you a few different resources or places to go to access to our research result on water management and irrigation scheduling. So you can use UT Extension publications. You can use utcrops.com to get some information on irrigation. And we regularly share our information on irrigation scheduling and other details during season on our UT Crops and our blog that we can share articles there, okay? And you can have access to it. Well, speaking of irrigation, why irrigation is needed? Well, I'll just make it short, quick, and simple. In Tennessee, we have the highest percentage of crop production under rainfall. That means we have the challenge of facing moderate to short-term drought during season. Periodically, we may have drought during season, right? When the irrigation needed is when rainfall amount is not enough. And also, the other important thing is this irrigation structures, variable rate irrigation technology, using sensor-based irrigation, smart irrigation, all these things are right now available, and we can use this to help with improving our crop production. And let me tell you something. In our survey in 2020, we noticed that in 78 counties, almost 1/3 of farmers are using irrigation. And then, most interestingly, 1/3 of those farmers are using sensor-based irrigation. What are these sensors and why they are important? So we have different types of these soil water sensors, and from a very simple one to very complicated one. But the goal of all of these sensors, the main goal is to help us to have a better understanding about soil and soil water holding capacity and the metric potential of this water. And so how plant can take water. So I want to emphasize it is very important that you want to use or recommend this sensor for any of this irrigation system that we have to remember that you need to consider the soil type that you're using this sensor, the average situation of your field that you want to use this sensor under your pivot or irrigation system. So that is very important. Then the soil, the depth of your plant root zone, how the plant root zone is developing, and what root zone you need to set up these sensors. And then how you set up the sensor and how soon you put up the sensor, and how do you check them? What kind of rain gauges are you using to follow up the rainfall, which is very important. So with all of this in mind, we are aware that we have this technology of sensor to help us with the irrigation. We have the technology of variable rate of irrigation to do more precisely in a right amount of time to apply irrigation. But the challenge is still we are facing the issue of overwatering. And there are questions on particularly soybean, when to initiate the irrigation, terminate the irrigation. And that type of questions are very common based on previous studies here in our silt loam soil and a bunch of other studies in our neighboring states related to soybean and irrigation. The termination timing at reproductive stage 6, which the seed filling is done, it's great. The further you go and you irrigate, you're gonna hurt the yield on production. But for initiation of irrigation, we're still dealing with a few questions. So using this sensor-based irrigation help us to pursue a few different experiments in large plots of 110 by 109 in varying replications during a few years to create the environment that farmers are facing in the field. And we wanted to see if we initiate irrigation at R1, reproductive stage 1, flowering, or reproductive stage 3, when the pods are shaping, or reproductive stage 5, when seed filling is happening, how the irrigation can change the yield and production. And we use mostly in the first 3 years maturity group 5 or late 4.9 of soybean in our study. So here is an example of the online access. These sensors, as I mentioned, that they have a very high tech of using cloud. You can transfer your information from sensor and logger set up in the field to your cloud, and then you can have access to your sensor information to see what is the magic potential, how negative the magic potential is getting. The more negative, the more critical for plants, right? And then you can see how much rainfall you get in that area. You can create your recommendation based on this information. Well, one thing we noticed based on previous years of research is if we initiate in our soil type of like silt loam situation here, initiate that irrigation at negative 65 to negative 70 kilopascal, it's going to be the time the plant hasn't been facing the stress yet, but is getting there. So that's the time that we initiate irrigation at 3 different reproductive stages versus rain-fed conditions. So let's see what we found. The result was very interesting. Here on y-axis, we have yield. On x-axis, you can see the 3 first years of 2017, 18, and 19, and different irrigation amount. Well, we noticed that the irrigation helped with yield improvement. And we noticed that in some years, the improvement was very significant. In some years that we had much more rainfall and it was a wet year, we couldn't get anything out of early irrigation structure. Like the earlier we irrigate, the more damages to plant when you have plenty of rainfall. So with this, having this in mind, we noticed that the best situation and the best scenario we had was when we initiated irrigation later at R5. And that made the best productivity using the least amount of water. Well, this experiment was conducted and continued in 2020 and 2021. And then I decided to summarize the initiation at R5 only and compare that with rain-fed to show you the yield stability. Look at this black line. You can see when you apply irrigation, you have a better stability of yield versus when the rain-fed condition is all applied. Well, this was done all on late for or considering maturity group 5 for our study. But then in 2020, I was interested to see if the same story applies on silt loam, later application of irrigation, better yield and profitability in maturity group 5. How about other maturity groups of soybean, such as earlier maturity group 3? Well, I initiated this experiment and I included reproductive stage 1 and 5 in comparing with check rain-fed. The same thing for maturity group 5 and maturity group 3 using the smart irrigation soil sensor-based initiation of irrigation at negative 65 to negative 70 kilopascal for 1 at earlier reproductive stage 1, the other at reproductive stage 5. And then we compare the maturity groups. Well, it was very interesting to see that in both maturity groups, we noticed that the later we initiate the irrigation, the more benefit. And here you can see for maturity group 3, when we initiated irrigation at R5, we had 14.2% better yield and productivity than rain-fed. And for maturity group 5 was around 8.5% higher. That was very interesting and confirmation of what we had in the past. And another proof of that in silt loam condition for soybean planting here in this environment in Malin, and on the rainfall condition in this past year, that was the best irrigation scenario. But my question was still, so how about the irrigation net returns? Can I get some information to help me to understand the dollar per acre for each one of these irrigation initiation and maturity group? So this helped me to have a conversation with our ag economists in ag economy department, and Dr. Smith and Dr. Martinez helped to develop this graph that you see here. We wanted to see the average cost, dollar per acre, how it's changing for earlier initiation of irrigation or later initiation between the two maturity group 5 and 3. It was extremely interesting to see. When we applied later, we had better yield. We applied irrigation at R5, terminated R6. For maturity group 5, we had the best yield compared to rain-fed and compared to other irrigation structure with better profitability. Why? Because we spent less dollar per acre in total cost for irrigation. So the same thing applied to maturity group 3. So this graph was very interesting in another proof of concept of, hey, when we have enough of rainfall and we can use this smart technology to count that in our irrigation system using these sensors, so we can do better and we can delay irrigation in our silt loam soil with less spending. So what we're going to do next, while we notice that it is very important to limit the amount of water, but still take a profit out of it, is in 2022, we're going to use our multi-year data for these soybean genotypes and create an irrigation budget for it. And the other thing we want to do is we already recorded multiple years of data on physiological parameters, maturity groups, and environmental conditions. Now we're adding the irrigation cost to it. So that can help us to create a model or an online system to help our producers to decide, to help with their decision making in the process of selecting those maturity groups, selecting the irrigation initiation, and how they can make better yield and profit out of it. Well, thanks again for joining in and being with us and listening to us. Please reach out. Here's my contact information. Shoot me an email if you have any question. Have a wonderful day.